Hello, cinema-loving friends. Thank you for joining us at the 47th Seattle International Film Festival. My name is Dustin Kaspar, and I'm the Educational Programs Manager at SIFF, as well as a feature and short film programmer at the festival. I am delighted to be hosting this conversation with a quartet of short films who are world premiering before feature films at SIFF 2021. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge that we live, work, and play on the traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples, specifically the Duwamish, Suquamish, and Muckleshoot tribes, and that we occupy this land. This acknowledgement does not take the place of authentic relationships with Indigenous communities, but serves as a first step in honoring the land we occupy and resisting the erasure of Indigenous past, present, and future. I encourage us all to turn this acknowledgement into action by supporting Indigenous communities financially if you are able, and through centering Indigenous voices in the films, art, and wider cultural conversations you engage. I am happy to welcome our four filmmakers and would ask that they introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about who they are, as well as giving us a snapshot of their films. And let's kick off with Alicia Delmore.
Hi, everybody. My name is Alicia Delmore. I'm a filmmaker in Seattle, Washington. Grew up here, have been an actor in this community for many, many years, and got to make a short film called Sing Along If You Know the Words. It's a little musical about a guy with some social anxiety and the way he chooses to deal with that.
Drew Holly with Where Should We Go?
Hello, everybody. My name is Drew Holly. I'm the series producer for the Albina series. The Albina series is aimed to educate border communities and create opportunities for community engagement. This first episode is Where Should We Go? You know, the common gentrification, asking the question, if we can't live in the inner city and we can't live in suburbia, where in the Black community are we allowed to go? So that's me. Was I supposed to say something else?
No, that's great. That's wonderful. We'll dig into that more very, very soon. Jason Outenreith with Greenwood.
Hi, my name is Jason Outenreith. I'm based in the Bay Area, San Francisco, as my background indicates. I directed the film Greenwood, which is about a local instrumental bow maker here and about his creative process. You know, I'm a violinist myself. My dad also makes violins, so thought it'd be interesting to kind of delve more into these kind of unseen creative processes.
That's great. And last but not least, Lena Larson with the film Rogue.
Hi, my name's Lena Larson. I originally grew up in Seattle and moved down to LA for college. Rogue is my senior thesis film I made at Loyola Marymount University. I co-wrote it and created it with my friend Ariana Skeland, who is Persian American, and she's such a great writer, and we decided to collaborate on this film where I directed it. And it's about a Persian girl in the 1980s who is a punk drummer and has to, reconcile, her relationship with her dad through drumming. So it's about identity and the immigrant experience.
Oh, I love it. Yay. This is our quartet. Exciting. I would love to kick around real quick, one more question for everyone, and then we'll probably dig a little bit into each of the films a bit more. What inspired you to become a storyteller? And storyteller in general, but also through film, through media, and how did that inspiration to you translate into your commitment to telling the specific story that you've brought to us today? And we'll probably do the same order here. So Alicia, gonna kick it over to you to start.
Sure, that's a super easy one to just. No, I think I got into storytelling in this particular genre by accident. I started as an actor in theater and did theater for a long time, and you have a lot less control over the stories that you're telling and the way that your voice is used as an actor. And it is a medium in which you don't get to practice your art unless somebody gives you permission to, which can be really frustrating. And so I started moving into producing and directing a couple of years ago, just in a desperate attempt to take back some ownership over an artistic process. This story came to me in a strange way, in that a friend of mine, Barry O'Neill, who's the lead actor in our film, had come to me to ask, hey, I am also desperate to take back some artistic control over my life. How do I do that? And I was like, I don't know what to tell you, buddy. It's real rough. If you've got some money, you could make a short. And he was like, well, actually, I wrote a short, and we started talking about it. And that's how this one kind of came to life.
Excellent. And Drew, same question to you, friend.
You know, I think how I started and wanted to become a storyteller, I was heavily influenced by John Singleton and Spike Lee as a child. And I knew it was a great way for a single voice to be magnified and to tell stories that wasn't necessarily being told by the mainstream market. I came upon this story, this series, and this is actually the first episode of a four-part series. I came upon this series as through Rakaya Adams here in Portland, Oregon. She had co-founded this organization, Albina Vision Trust. Albina Vision Trust is trying to gradually influence how this neighborhood is going to be used for the next 20 years, opposed to just pushing the Black people out of the neighborhood, is to kind of take it back in a way. And she asked me if I could help on this project, and we came up with this series, and we hired different directors for each episode, and it's a very fun process.
Excellent. And Jason, your storytelling journey.
Yeah, I hadn't actually made a documentary before I did the Peace Corps. So I lived in Nicaragua for about 2.5 years. And during my time there, I made my first feature documentary and realized that it was this great excuse to just spend a lot of time with interesting people and learn from their experiences and learn from their lives. And learn from that and try to apply it to my own to be a better person, but also to be able to share those experiences with other people, hopefully in a meaningful way.
And you kind of talked a little bit about what drew you to the project already. Do you have anything to add to that in terms of storytelling or?
Yeah, I guess, as a violinist, I had always kind of taken the tools themselves for granted, like as a musician, like where these things come from, and it didn't, and I guess it was kind of a recent thing, wanting to explore this more. And I just had some conversations with John, the bow maker, and we worked it out. We'd actually talked about doing something like a couple of years ago that didn't quite work out. But it finally came together this time.
Yeah, fabulous. And Lena, your storytelling journey.
I always listened to books on tape when I was a kid. And I love stories. And I originally went to school for screenwriting, and I just felt like I wasn't, writing was so hard, and I wanted to do something that was more visual. So that made me transition to doing more production. And I love like set design, makeup, the art, like the visual aspect of filmmaking. And so that's really what draws me to directing.
Excellent. And I want to start off kind of digging into Rogue. to shake up our what order we're going in some way, shape, or form. And I'm going to encourage any of our fellow filmmakers to jump into this kind of coffee hour conversation as we go. But Lena, can you talk a little bit? You mentioned already that the film is set in the 1980s. It's kind of a timeless story of youth and parents and tradition and passion, etc. Why the 1980s for you? Was that the like, ooh, this is the sweet spot, this is going to be a period piece, as opposed to a contemporary storytelling?
Well, so we wanted to do the 1980s, by we I mean Ariane and I, because we created it together. Because so many in the 80s there was the Iranian Revolution, and so many Iranians came, especially to Southern California, and at the same time the punk movement was starting in Southern California. So we thought that those two things happening at the same time were significant, and would be a really interesting contrast for a character to live in. And it also allowed for us to create a visual texture by shooting it on 16 millimeter, which also mimics or is a visual way of presenting the grittiness of the punk world. Yeah.
And in writing, you mentioned that you and your collaborator kind of wrote this together. How did that process work for you? Was this something that was always intended to be a short? Was it originally like a 20-page something that you shaved down? And one of the things I love so much about the short is that it's so efficient. It feels like a lesser filmmaker would have made a 20-minute short of this, and you have so distilled it. And I assume that's probably starting from the writing process with making it so very efficient.
Thank you. It was definitely a challenge because my co-writer Ariana, she actually wrote 2 features, and then that's after the second feature. I was like, we should make this into a short as a proof of concept. And she, together it took many drafts, 16 drafts, to distill it into something that really works as a short on its own, instead of a feature condensed into 10 minutes. So that was something that we definitely had to cut. And even after we were in editing, we cut, it was originally 15 minutes long, and we cut it down even more. So it was just a process of elimination. Yeah.
And what was that editing process like for you? And was it something that you did largely on your own? Did you have a lot of kind of sharing it with other people and encouraging them to tell you where to shave away at it? Or it also was part of school, so it might have been all in that process of schooling.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting. We literally finished shooting on March 16th, and that's the same day everything shut down in LA. So we got so lucky that none of our main cast dropped the day before. And yeah, editing was done entirely in an apartment over the course of a year. We had a lot of eyes on it, and it was definitely very challenging edit, because since we did shoot it on film, we only got 1 to 2 takes of everything and very little variation. So a lot of the performances were very tricky. We even had to take tails of shots, those reaction shots. So it was definitely challenging, but yeah, my editor was great.
Yeah. And can I ask one more question, and then I'm happy if anyone else has a specific question. But the working with your actors, with your performers, was there a lot of kind of collaboration ahead of time? I mean, they appear to be of the Persian community, and likely have their own opinions and thoughts, or was it pretty much a nope, here's the script, this is what my co-writer and I've written, etc., along that line?
So part of shooting on film that was a great experience was there was so much rehearsing, because we did not have a lot of time, and you don't have a lot of film, so you don't have many takes. So we did a lot of rehearsing, and in terms of casting, it was really important that we cast a all Persian like all the Persian characters were played by Persian actors. And and then in terms of all of the background, they were all family and friends of the actors. So it was this really great, the days that we were in the Persian house with all of those characters, it was a really great, environment. It felt like a big family gathering, and we were just shooting it. And for the punk side of it, we cast so Kyle O'Gorman, who is our lead singer in the film, he's also the lead singer of a band called Crash 45 from Santa Barbara. And he wrote and sang and performed the song Toxic and the other songs in the film that are all punk songs. So he was really great. And we had all, real punks come out and, be in the crowd for the punk scene. So it was really cool seeing, I'm not personally a punk or Persian. I was just the director, but it was really cool to, something that, the most important part.
Fabulous. We lose a couple words here and there, but Lena's obviously out, out in a place other than close to civilization, perhaps. But wonderful. Are there other questions for Lena and for Rogue from the group?
I wanted to know what your process was in casting, especially your lead actress, just because the part is so specific in terms of needing to know how to play drums. Like that's, so I don't know how, like what your casting pool was like or how that process worked for you, but that was when I was watching, I was just like, how did they find her?
Yeah. Casting, we got super, super, super lucky. So almost everybody that came in to play Ro was just not like, none of them were truly rebellious people. And Vita, when she came in, she already had she was wearing more grungy clothing. And then when she started telling me about, always want to know about someone's, personal life, how they relate to the character, why they believe that they can inhabit this role. And she's literally like perfect for the role. She's dealt with a lot of things similar to the character in her own personal life. And she was willing to learn how to play the drums. So she learned how to do that in like a month. So she was fantastic, phenomenal, really easy to work with, great sport. Yeah.
Wow. That is commitment.
Yeah.
A month, 1 month from zero to drums. That's quite exceptional. Well, Lena, thank you so much for Rogue. We'll jump to another film here, and I know, given that you're out in the middle of the natural world, if you need to pop off,
sorry,
totally understand. Let's jump.
Okay, I'll try to stay connected. Yeah.
All right, that's fine. Yay. Let's jump to one of our docs, Drew, and where should we go? There's so much that I want to talk to you about with this film. It's been mentioned already a little bit in our prior conversation around the extraordinary amount of archival footage. And you mentioned as well, this is part of a larger project, and so they're it's a little bit more episodic in terms of what is being presented. Can you talk a little bit about architecting the whole of this project, and how within each of the episodes they also have their own kind of architecture, and where are you finding this information? How are you culling through it all, and how do you decide in an 11-minute short what are the most essential archival things to present?
Well, as you know, filmmaking is a team sport, so we luckily have a great researcher and director who is super familiar with the area. The reason why we did short episodics is because we felt it was easier to consume, easier to share, and the kind of the point of this project is almost PR in nature. Is we want to shine light, you know, on this area. I hope that answers some of your questions.
How long was the editing process for the first episode?
We started this process, this as like a lot of you during the pandemic, right? We were filming, and so the episode started out as safe spaces. They were going to take on more of a topic of sorts. To after all the research, what we found, and it just changed the name to, where can we go, right? The people getting kicked out of Beaverton to the people getting kicked out of downtown inner city. It's like where and then people were pushed out to this numbers part of Portland. And I'm sure sooner or later that'll be gentrified too. And, and we asked in the Black community, where can we go? Where should we go? The editing, it didn't take long, it maybe 5 months or so.
And with the film is specific in many respects to the Portland area, to the is it Albina?
Albina, yeah.
That was pronounced. And yet it feels like it is reflective of probably just about any major city of what occurs. How how intentional, it seems like it is specific to Albina, but that you've really very effectively made something that speaks to anyone. And can you talk a little bit to how intentional that was from the beginning, or has that been as it's been going, it has been obvious how reflective it was?
Portland and Oregon has the reputation as the whitest state or the whitest city in the United States. That might be true, but there's a really thriving Black community there, and and this story it's all over the United States. It's not just Portland, although Portland faces the same adversities. So yeah, it was very deliberately to point out that this is happening all over, and to people who have contributed to this gentrification, to take a look at themselves and how they can maybe atone in ways.
Are there, within the whole project, is there additional resources beyond the films? Is there a website that is kind of being creative with resources and engaging with? And we obviously, and we as white people specifically are indicted in the film with the opening and closing are devastating to me to watch. And that need for atonement and reflecting and respecting that is absolutely there. But in terms of continuing supporting and kind of action items, is there a place where people can go and dig in more resources?
Yeah, so I would say I would point them to albinavision.org. Albina is honoring this neighborhood for their past transit and transforming the existing property into a sort of vibrant, diverse community that is anchored intentionally towards the underrepresented community. So yeah, visit albinavision.org if you want to help and support. Yeah.
And are there other cities or spaces that you see doing a good job? Like I somehow, I'm thinking about, I've been reading lately about Evanston, Illinois is currently paying, or is starting to pay reparations to people within the Black community through whatever, and I don't know a lot about it, but I'm seeing that there are other municipalities, you know, starting to respect and build more of that activism into action, as opposed to just, you know, talking about it.
I'm not aware of any other, or could I possibly speak on that? I think my role is again a storyteller, and have people reflect within themselves. So I wouldn't know about all those things.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the things that landed for me so hard, and I feel like is such a like, I'm so glad that you're telling this story, is that I think that both Seattle and Portland are very similar in that they're seen as these real liberal bastions, you know, that like, look, we're all so far along in this conversation, right? But in a lot of ways that makes the struggles that are Black members of our community, it makes them even more invisible, because we already think of ourselves as so far along in this conversation. And what I so appreciated about watching, God, especially that archival footage, which, yeah, it's brutal to watch, but it's also just the truth, you know, that this isn't far from where we are now. This is still happening in a lot of ways. And until we, the white folks in this conversation, take ownership over that and really just recognize it and say, this is happening now, this happened then, this is a conversation that continues, we can't do anything to change that conversation. So you, as a filmmaker, putting this in front of us to say, this is what's happening, like, this is what I see from my perspective, forces us to grapple with something that is very easy, I think, in our liberal community to gloss over, you know? So I thank you for that.
Absolutely. Thank you for congesting it and not allowing it to hurt. What's the word I've heard recently? Like white fragility. Is that what you guys have heard?
That's real. That's real.
You know, this wasn't something, and in my filmmaking, I can't worry about white fragility. Am I saying it right?
Yeah, you're saying it right.
Yeah, that's it.
We can only tell the truth, and that's what we're doing. You can't hide it in archival footage. It just continues to repeat.
You're letting the words of those people speak for themselves.
Yeah.
You're not putting any words in anybody's mouth. You didn't script anything. You're just showing what people say.
Right. And it's how it is and was.
Yeah.
And especially, you know, and I was talking to someone else about the film recently, that, you know, it is, you know, it is something that is absolutely a work of inspiration to the rest of us to stop being complacent, to recognize the reality of what has happened and what is still happening, and that at some point it is up to all of us to change that narrative, and it's not going to happen by just sitting and watching a film. Inside it might, but it needs to translate into what are we going to do about it, as opposed to just going like, oh yes, that's a problem.
Right.
Yeah. It's great. I cannot wait for the rest of the. Are the other films available at this point? Or
the second episode is actually being worked on now, and it is an animated short, and the title is Playing Possum.
Excellent.
And it talks about back in 1982, the police in Oregon, Portland, they pulled up to a historical Black place called the Burger Barn, where Black people got their burgers back here in Portland. And they threw like dead possums at the door. I don't know if it was a way to try to intimidate or what it was, but that's what our second episode is about, Playing Possum.
And is there a planned a number of episodes? Is it open-ended in that however many you feel like telling or people's interest?
Right now it's planned for 4, and all about 5 to 8 minutes in length.
Excellent. Fabulous. Drew, thank you. And to everyone involved in the project. It is exceptional, and I'm so happy to have it here at the festival. And specifically, it's playing in front of Who We Are, A Chronicle of Racism in America. That the two films are absolute, different sides of a coin. I mean, not that, I mean, they're similar, but obviously play very well together, and in a very specific and in a very kind of larger historical context that Jeffrey Robinson presents within that film. So,
Wow.
yeah, here.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Drew. Oh,
Yeah.
yay. Let's jump to Alicia, and there's no way to transition effectively from the extraordinary documentary work there, Drew.
Let's talk about fluff now.
Let's talk about dinner parties.
Yeah.
Somehow. What you mentioned a little bit that Barry came to you with this. One of the things I love about the film is that it's fun, it's enjoyable, but it also has, much like all these films, an activism built into it, an awareness, a deeper social sense of how we recognize other people in our worlds, and encouraging us, if we are socially anxious, to get out of that. But also, I think for those of us who perhaps have less inhibition, to recognize the challenges that some people face in a social setting. And did you and Barry, I know, in kind of writing this and ultimately designing what you would shoot, have a lot of kind of talk around how this would be represented in terms of the different people who would see it, or was it pretty much just a like, hey, this sounds like fun, let's make it?
No, I mean, I think that, I think that all good comedy is grounded in honesty, right? And that this came from a really dark, deep place in Barry, where, this is, I think large social gatherings are possibly his worst nightmare. So this really came out of a place of like, of just something that was deeply true for him. And I do think that it lands for folks. I mean, a lot of the people who watched it when we were in the editing process said, it just makes me so uncomfortable because I've told that story at dinner parties before. Barry tells a story that, or his character Ben tells a story that you can just sort of watch it go sideways, and it's just a terribly boring, uncomfortable story to sit with as it's happening. But I also think that it feels that way for the main character more so than it does for everybody in the room, because everybody's listened to somebody tell a story that just didn't totally land before. But the way that you feel when that's happening to you is a different experience than the way that you experience it from the outside.
Yeah.
So.
And was there the kind of collaborative process with the people around the dinner party? Was there, much like Lena's film, did you have a lot of rehearsal time and engagement around that, or was it like we got an afternoon, let's do this, here's the script?
We did not have a lot of rehearsal time. I do envy that, but we were using all union actors, and we had a very limited budget, and so we spent some time talking about, well, actually one of the things that we did was we ended up rolling on some between takes conversations that were happening at the dinner table when we were making lighting adjustments. The actors, who all really enjoyed they're just chatty, they're telling stories. At some point we rolled on some of that to get some of the conversational pieces that sort of linked in. And I found that really charming, that we were able to dovetail some of that stuff in. But no, most of it was scripted. There are definitely a couple of moments here and there that aren't, but I think that it was really just that shared experience of like everybody getting to a certain age and not being able to make time for their friends the way that they used to be able to make time for their friends. When you get everybody together, how great it is, and everybody says like, oh, we really should do this more often, and then you never do because it's just really hard to make that time to get together.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't like equating this film to activism because it just is so silly. But it was one of the things that I genuinely loved about making it, was that it was a nice world to just spend some time in. It was just a silly, fun place to hang out in for a couple of days on that set.
Yeah, yeah. The I think most storytelling is activism ultimately on any number of different levels, and even in a simple sort of space. And I look at Jason's film, which we'll get to in a second, but you know, is absolutely looking at craft. And we have a loss of craft, and even if Jason isn't going like, God, this is why I'm making this, it's absolutely underpinning everything that is in that film is an appreciation of what we've lost and how important it is to go back to it. And especially, you know, engaging within social anxiety is, you know, it is presented in a fun way, but when I watch it, I dig into thinking about that, the experience that Ben has within the film. And yeah, it's absolutely activism to me.
I'm glad. I mean, I hear that. That makes sense to
Yeah.
me. I think the thing that that I am most proud of is that Ben gets to have his victory at the end of the film. That like, it is not the victory he plans to have, but that he does do the thing he sets out to do. Just
Sure.
maybe not in the way he meant to.
Yeah, yeah, and is the first step into that larger world of confidence in so many ways.
Yeah.
Can I ask about the you know, musicals are their own special brand of filming challenges. Did I assume you did that with playback and had to record it ahead of time, or did you record everything live on set?
We planned on recording after. So we but we also hired a really good sound recordist for on set who was like, you know, let's just be careful. We'll mic everybody, we'll record everything. It's not going to sound the way you want it to, but we'll do our best. And then the plan was to get everybody back into a studio afterwards to sync up and really do a solid, clean recording. And then COVID hit, and you know, we're midway through the edit and we realized that there's not a time in which we're going to be able to bring 6 people into a small space to sing at each other.
Yeah.
And so then we went back in and we looked at the sound really carefully and we said, I think we can do it. And I am actually really thrilled with the way that it turned out, the sound of it, because I hate watching musicals that sound obviously recorded when the singing starts and it sounds obviously recorded in a different space. So I did want it to feel like in real space, and it definitely does. I mean, you know, it's not perfect, but I'm really pleased with the way that it turned out.
Yeah, well, and I'd say as a singer myself, you know, the lack of perfect feels so realistic.
Yeah.
In a way that I valued about the short considerably, and it feels like people around a dinner party who are solid musicians, but you know, if we were all to break into song, it would you know, it has a clumsy delight to it that feels much more real in a great way.
I like clumsy delight.
That's probably the name of my autobiography. But are there additional questions for Alicia from any of our friends here?
I was wondering how you approach the choreography.
Yeah. We
in your film?
Yeah, we found a great local choreographer named Wade Madsen, who is a much better choreographer than we had any right to be working with, who agreed to do our project. Wade has also choreographed for a filmmaker named Wes Hurley, whose feature is playing at SIFF right now as well. And so Wes actually put me in touch with Wade, and Wade kind of read what we were doing and was like, yeah, I can work with you guys, that's fine. So we had 2 hours in the morning with Wade around the table before the crew came in with all the actors. He staged the entire dance number in about an hour and a half or 2 hours. We rehearsed it about, you know, 8 times, and then we shot it, you know, 400 times. But the entire thing was put together in the first half of one of our 2 days of shooting, and it was unreal watching it come together. It was, you know, it was very much like, okay, so you're going to move here, and, you know, we'll see a kick here, and then you're going to spin around this way, and okay, hold there, let's run just that little part. And so he really just sort of pieced it together, but it was a delight to watch happen. It was like magic. That was a really magic day. I didn't know how we were going to do that, and Wade was like, well, I'll just do here, do, and then it was done. It was amazing.
Yeah, Wade is exceptional. I've worked with Wade before, and A plus choreography.
Yeah.
Drew, you had a question as well, it looked like.
Your short was so good. I felt so bad for that guy. I think I maybe been in a situation like that. Let's just say I hadn't been in a situation like that before. But how long did it take you to cast? Tell me about casting.
Yeah. Well, so, you know, Seattle's not a huge community, but there's a good amount of actors up here. So we had so I knew some folks. There were a couple of people that I had my eye on that I was really hoping would be able to do it. Barry was obviously a given, our lead actor, because it was really his baby. And then we did a day on set, and it was just, people just fell into place one at a time. We had a couple like, oh, well, we could do this combination, or we could do this combination. But then as soon as one person clicked in, their partner clicked in pretty quickly as well. It was really nice. It was actually a really fun casting session, because everybody had to bring in a song, you know, and that has its pros and cons for sure. But it was a lot of fun.
Well, I am so happy that it is part of the festival. It's playing in front of All Sorts, which is a particularly unique and absurdist in its own way portrait, and I think the two of them go so darn well together. It's yay, exciting. Let's jump to Jason and finish up with Greenwood. What you know, as a documentary filmmaker approaching something that was a very personal subject for you, how did you? Was it easy to get Greenwood to agree to being a part of the film and to go and just film the whole process of what he does to create the bows, or was it something that took a lot of convincing?
I would say it took a lot of convincing, about 2 years of convincing.
Oh my God.
When I first got the idea, he wasn't really interested in, you know, participating, you know, in the project. And then, you know, he countered like a year later, like with something that sounded more like, you know, an advertisement kind of thing or something, you know. So it did take a lot of, you know, convincing, and I, you know, had to share some of my past work with him, and we had to go like back and forth on it. Of the films I've made so far, it was probably the one that required the most like pre-production, in terms of like, you know, in order to like kind of speed up the whole process, we had him prepare like 4 or 5 bows at the same time that were in different stages of completion. That it wouldn't be this, you know, painstakingly, you know, boring process of watching someone do this over, you know, 40 actual hours. So it took a lot of setup time, you know, to coordinate that. And then also I had to kind of educate myself about the process ahead of time. So, because going into it, I mean, I was curious about learning more about it, but I didn't know a lot of the stuff that, you know, ended up being in the film. I didn't know a lot of the steps that were, you know, in the process. So it was a learning experience.
And from my recollection, it's pretty much just, I mean, it's not like you have a wide variety of other people who are interviewed with it. It's really, you know, investing time with him and the process, and ultimately seeing, you know, someone perform. Was it always intentional to be a very specific, you know, sitting with the creator, or was there intention at some point to have it be multiple people being interviewed and a much larger conversation?
I do have some kind of future projects I'm working on that are like about, you know, that are kind of more music focused. But for this, I did really want to keep it as kind of short and sweet as possible, just because I felt like, you know, it could get kind of bogged down, you know, if it was just too much, too many people on this particular topic. I thought it would kind of weigh the film down and make it less enjoyable. So I decided to kind of go the short, short route, and I just kind of try to let people as much as possible inhabit his space that he lives in. And, I put a lot of focus on trying to get the different sounds of all the different tools, all the different woods, all the different, that it was just a really unique like environment, to spend time in.
Yeah. And did you, I know, an initial cut, was it something that was like, 20 minutes long, and then you just whittled it down in terms of how much can we show while also being the most efficient with it? Or what was your process to kind of go like, here's the whole process, and then make it something, very, very quick and engaging?
Yeah, I mean, always after the first cut, I see it, I'm like, oh, it's like 25 minutes. Oh, maybe this can be a feature film. Like, never, yeah, I found it's usually best to get shorter rather than, than longer. Unless you've like made the preparations for the longer form stuff. But yeah, it started. In my experience, these short docs always start out like, for me, at least in my creative process, I try to just get everything on the table, just like put all my cards out there, and then kind of start whittling away. Kind of like we talked a lot about this actually in our conversations about how the parallels between the processes of bow making and editing, in the sense of like constantly like, just making incremental adjustments to everything, and until you have something that has a certain, shape and feel to it.
Well, it definitely, and part of why, and we've mentioned editing several times here, and especially the efficiency of it. As a film programmer, I see those 25-minute, like, wow, this is great, and it's like, no, it should be 10 minutes, or you could continue containing that, and the films that end up being, the strong presentations at the festival are usually those that have been distilled down to a really, really engaging morsel of of cinematic food, I guess. I don't know, something like.
Yeah, you have to like just put it through so many strainers, and I show my work to people, like you really want to cut out every single thing that is a waste of people's time,
Yeah.
every single thing that is not advancing, the story or the agenda, like it just has to go, and it's sometimes hard, I think, in documentary, because you get attached to certain moments that you were there for or something, or you think about how you felt at a certain time, and you're like, I really want this in there, and your friend who wasn't there is like, it's just not quite working, for me, it's super helpful to have these like just honest feedback, go in the editing process, people who feel comfortable telling me like, that part is bad, you need to just be done with that.
Yeah. Fabulous. Are there other questions for Jason from the other filmmakers here?
Yeah, it's not an easy thing to have so much sort of quiet space in something that's really short and tight as well. And I think that's a really remarkable strength of your film. For me, I've spent a fair amount of time over the past year watching episodes of The Repair Shop, which is this sweet little British show where people bring in their old broken antiques to this brilliant craft shop, and then you just watch people do their craft for an hour and repair this thing back into its glorious, it's very British. Anyway, it has a similar, like watching people do something that they're very, very skilled at and really being able to see the detail work that they're doing. There's something very reassuring about that. And I don't know if that is a particularly reassuring thing during COVID, when it feels like sort of everything is falling apart, to watch somebody restore something or to create something. But it had a similar feeling to me, which I really loved. it's a quiet and really beautiful film.
Thank you. Yeah, I think people are definitely like attracted to just these like handmade things, whether it's like a bow or, you know, a ceramics master, whatever the case may be. But it's easy to like kind of lose sight of these people that keep those arts alive, you know, especially where now it's like with iPhones, you know, they're whether the second the 200th or the 200,000th are going to be, you know, pretty much identical, you know, and these are parts that are like pressed together by machines. And I got to thinking about that a lot, just these different, just like what does it mean, you know, these days to be good at a handcrafted thing when everything is reaching this like kind of critical edge of automation, you know.
I had so you cut between this violinist doing like a solo with the symphony, and it really like when you intercut that with the bow making, it really creates this great crescendo and really builds up momentum. And I was wondering if that was something that you knew you were going to do like when you were planning out the film, or was that something that you came up with in post?
I don't think I specifically thought like this is going to be like the orchestral like montage, but I knew that I was going to need to build towards showing. It was really important to like show the results of the craftsmanship itself. So it's like, it's not just that he makes these things. It's important to like make that connection to like, what is the result of this, and the result is like, you know, you have this beautiful music and you have this, you know, music that has existed for hundreds of years and is still being played today. So I knew I was going to have to make that connection somehow. I just wasn't exactly sure at that point. You know, when I went into filming, I wasn't exactly sure what shape that would take.
Yeah. Jason, it's a wonderful film. One of those things that this is being presented in front of a Finnish documentary called Conductivity, that is about amateur conductors in school learning to conduct. And obviously there's the classical music connection that's there, but it's also as much about, you know, these various traditions within the classical music world that continue, and it's really another one of the marvelous marriages of films playing together with others. Yeah. We should probably close. We've been talking for a while here. Thank you for still watching, if you are watching. Yay. But friends, it's wonderful to have your films as part of the festival, to have your films live in the world. I so value artists and your willingness to put yourselves on screen, your stories on screen, you know, people that you see in the world that we should engage with, internalize, and become part of ourselves. And all four of these films, I'm very happy, are a part of me, and are already, you know, shifting how I think, how I do things, and who I am. And I thank you all for that immensely. And I'm glad that people are engaging with the films and will continue to do so for time to come.